Have you ever imagined looking up at the sky and seeing an airplane made entirely of rubber? Or maybe a Cold War fighter jet that was supposed to take off sitting straight up on its tail? Aviation history is filled with brilliant engineering, massive military budgets, and absolute madness. These aren't just bizarre concepts or sci-fi drawings. They were real solutions to real problems. They were built by the most daring engineers in the world. Now stay with me until the very end, because the final aircraft on this list is a vertical takeoff nightmare. It was so dangerous, even its test pilot refused to land it. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and let's dive in. How do you double a fighter jet's range without adding massive, highly vulnerable external fuel drop tanks? You literally weld two complete airplanes together. Meet the North American F-82 twin Mustang, an experimental machine born in the desperate final days of World War II. Powered by twin Packard engines, this absolute beast generated a combined output of 3,200 horsepower, to put that massive number into perspective. That is the raw mechanical punch of four modern Shelby Mustang muscle cars, all roaring at full throttle on the runway simultaneously. Visually, this machine constantly plays tricks on your eyes. It looks like a bizarre glitch in reality, where two P-51 Mustangs were fused directly at the wing. However, this was not a mistake. It was a highly calculated engineering solution. The military urgently needed a high-speed escort fighter. It had to be capable of flying grueling, ultra-long-range missions across the massive Pacific Ocean without totally exhausting a single pilot. Let us bust a common myth right now. This was not just one active plane dragging a hollow dummy fuselage alongside it. Both cockpits were fully functional. It allowed the two pilots to take turns flying and sleeping during grueling 12-hour combat patrols. Test pilots reported that despite its incredibly bulky appearance, the twin Mustang flew with terrifying agility. In fact, a production model named Betty Joe set a historic record in 1947 by flying nonstop from Hawaii to New York. The mechanical coordination required was an absolute marvel. But if you think bolting two airframes together is crazy, wait until you see the ugly duckling of amphibious warfare. How does a heavy aircraft land safely on choppy ocean waves without the fuselage getting violently ripped apart on impact? The answer is the Grumman J2F Duck, a massive amphibious biplane officially introduced in 1936, powered by a single Wright Cyclone engine pushing out exactly 900 horsepower. This machine was never built for blistering supersonic speed. Instead, it was engineered for pure, unapologetic survival in the absolute harshest marine environments imaginable. It weighed around 7,700 pounds when fully loaded for a dangerous ocean mission. Looking directly at the Duck, it is arguably one of the most awkwardly proportioned military aircraft ever constructed. It features a massive boat-like central main float that is blended directly into the belly of the main fuselage. This makes it look incredibly chunky and highly unstable when parked on dry land. But that bizarre, bloated shape was driven strictly by the harsh realities of World War II. The military needed a rugged utility aircraft. It could launch directly from battleships and safely rescue downed pilots under heavy enemy fire. Despite its highly comical looks, the Duck was deeply respected by every single aviator who flew it. Pilots frequently joked that it had the flight aerodynamics of a falling brick, yet they completely trusted it with their lives during harrowing open-ocean rescues. It defied all standard expectations of graceful aviation. It firmly proved that raw utility always trumps beauty in wartime. The Duck was certainly a bulky and strange machine, but if you think that design is extreme, our next aircraft takes bloated and bizarre to a terrifying new level. What exactly happens when you desperately need massive thrust to hunt Soviet submarines, but your aircraft carrier elevators are simply too small for a traditional bomber? You create the Fairey Gannet, a British carrier-borne anti-submarine aircraft introduced in 1949. The mechanical heart of this beast was the double Mamba turboprop engine. An absolute monstrosity, churning out nearly 3,000 horsepower. It weighed roughly 23,000 pounds. And it utilized that massive power to drive a set of incredibly bizarre contra-rotating propellers positioned right at the nose. From the outside, the Gannet looks almost entirely comical. It has a bloated, heavily pregnant fuselage, combined with a wildly disproportionate wingspan. However, this bizarre and awkward geometry was a direct, calculated response to the rapidly escalating tensions of the Cold War. The thick fuselage housed cutting-edge radar systems and a massive internal weapons bay designed to drop heavy torpedoes on enemy subs. A popular myth claims the dual propellers were just for show, but actually they eliminated the dangerous torque twist during tricky carrier deck landings. The true, undisputed genius of the Gannet, however, was its unique mechanical survival mechanism. Pilots could completely shut down one half of the double Mamba engine mid-flight. They stopped one propeller entirely to save precious fuel while loitering over the dark ocean for hours. Test pilots constantly described the surreal, eerie silence of flying with a dead front prop, while the Gannet relied heavily on massive, complex propellers to stay aloft. Our next machine completely abandoned traditional aircraft design to pursue a radically different, highly futuristic vision. How do you successfully build a giant aircraft that can spy on enemy territory continuously for 4 straight days without utilizing a single drop of traditional jet fuel? The definitive answer is the Boeing Phantom Eye, a high-altitude, long-endurance unmanned aerial vehicle officially developed in 2012. Instead of massive jet turbines, it is powered by 2 highly modified 2.3-liter Ford engines. These are very similar to what you would find in a standard passenger car, each producing 150 horsepower but running entirely on volatile liquid hydrogen. The Phantom Eye looks significantly less like a standard airplane. It is more like a massive bulbous white egg that suddenly sprouted a pair of 150-foot glider wings. This strange, swollen fuselage was definitely not an aerodynamic blunder. It was an absolute structural necessity. Designed to securely store 2 gigantic 8-foot spherical tanks of liquid hydrogen fuel. In a modern era where warfare strictly demands persistent, unblinking surveillance, Boeing engineers successfully created a 9,000-pound spy machine whose only actual exhaust byproduct was pure, clean water. While it looks completely awkward and unaerodynamic while sitting heavily on the ground runway. Up at 65,000 feet, it sliced silently through the extremely thin upper atmosphere with incredible cruising efficiency. Lead aerospace engineers proudly noted that watching this massive silent sphere slowly lift off the runway truly felt like witnessing captured alien technology. It proved that the future of flight did not always need to be sleek. But if you think a giant hydrogen egg is weird, wait until you see a wing powered entirely by sunlight. Is it actually physically possible to fly a large aircraft to the absolute very edge of space, utilizing absolutely nothing but the raw power of sunlight? In the late 1990s, NASA and AeroVironment confidently answered that difficult question with the Helios prototype. This revolutionary solar-powered flying wing completely abandoned traditional internal combustion engines, relying entirely instead on 14 small electric motors spread evenly across its massive structural frame. It successfully clawed its way up to a record-breaking 96,863 feet in the year 2001. The visual exterior design of the Helios is truly mind-bending to witness. It possesses no central fuselage, absolutely no tail section, and completely lacks a pilot cockpit. It is just a monolithic, highly transparent wing stretching an unbelievable 247 feet wide. It aggressively curves upward into a massive smiling shape during flight. Weighing just over 2,000 pounds, it was built to solve the ultimate aerospace challenge, creating an atmospheric satellite that could hover silently over a single spot on Earth for several months at a time. Watching the massive Helios slowly fly overhead, was frequently described by ground crews as watching a delicate, translucent jellyfish swimming peacefully through the sky. Sadly, its extreme structural fragility was ultimately its catastrophic downfall. In the year 2003, severe turbulence violently caused the massive wing to bend entirely too far and break apart over the Pacific Ocean. Before we move on to the next 5 aircraft, hit that like button and subscribe. If you thought Helios was fragile, our next machine literally possessed no tail rotor. How exactly do you lift an incredibly heavy timber payload directly out of a dense, treacherous mountain forest without the helicopter spinning violently out of control? You eliminate the vulnerable tail rotor entirely and officially build the Kaman K-MAX, a heavy-lift syncropter that took its very first flight in 1991. Powered by a thunderous turboshaft engine consistently generating 1,500 shaft horsepower. This machine was built strictly for pure brute force lifting, capable of carrying an astonishing 6,000 pounds of cargo straight up into the air. To the untrained casual observer, the K-MAX heavily looks like a chaotic mechanical disaster waiting to happen. The main fuselage is razor-thin, measuring remarkably just 2.5 feet wide, specifically designed to give the pilot unparalleled downward visibility, but the real shock visually comes from its massive intermeshing rotors, unlike a standard traditional helicopter. The K-MAX has 2 massive main rotors, mounted side by side at a sharp angle. They spin in opposite directions, their fast blades violently crossing paths like an egg beater, somehow never colliding in midair. This absolutely terrifying synchronized mechanical dance is exactly what efficiently allows all engine power to go directly into heavy lifting, making it an absolute living legend in extreme heli-logging operations. Military pilots serving in Afghanistan actually utilized highly modified, unmanned drone versions of the K-MAX to autonomously drop vital combat supplies directly into intense war zones without risking any human lives. Watching those huge blades weave closely through each other gives anyone anxiety, from rugged, heavy-lifting timber work. We now rapidly move to a Cold War concept so absurd, it feels completely fake. Could a downed military fighter pilot trapped deep inside hostile enemy territory actually survive by pulling an airplane out of a small box and blowing it up like a cheap pool toy? The United States military actually thought so, directly leading to the bizarre creation of the Goodyear Inflatoplane in 1956, powered by a tiny, buzzing 40-horsepower Nelson engine. This entire experimental aircraft was constructed not from standard aluminum or heavy steel, but entirely from specially designed high-strength rubberized fabric, weighing a mere 225 pounds empty. It visually looks absolutely ridiculous on the runway, appearing as a squishy, bloated, cartoonish caricature of a real airplane with a highly exposed pilot strapped directly to the top. But standing right behind the highly comical exterior was a deadly serious Cold War strategic problem. The military urgently wanted a lightweight rescue vehicle. It could be airdropped silently behind the Iron Curtain, fully inflated in exactly 5 minutes using a standard hand pump, and flown quickly to safety. Once fully pressurized, the rubber fabric actually became incredibly rigid and structurally sound. Test pilots who actually flew the rubber machine openly admitted it was a deeply terrifying personal experience. Knowing they were sitting directly on highly flammable aviation fuel, strapped securely to a giant flying air mattress. While a famous aviation legend constantly jokes that the project was quickly canceled because a well-aimed bow and arrow could easily shoot it down, the official truth was just as blunt. The military correctly realized a rubber plane was completely defenseless against standard enemy rifle fire. From rubber toys to supersonic monsters, let us continue. How do you successfully launch a heavy supersonic interceptor when enemy bombers completely destroy your concrete runways? You aggressively turn the open ocean directly into your new runway. The Convair F2Y Sea Dart, publicly unveiled in 1953, was a radically insane attempt to build a fully supersonic seaplane Driven forcefully by twin turbojet engines, producing an earth-shattering combined 12,000 pounds of thrust. It was heavily designed to rapidly tear through the sky, to aggressively intercept fast-moving Soviet nuclear bombers before they could safely reach American soil. The Sea Dart visually looks violently fast, even when it is just sitting perfectly still on the water. It proudly features a sleek, highly swept delta wing design, but the true mechanical madness clearly lies right underneath the fuselage. Instead of utilizing conventional rubber landing gear or bulky drag-inducing pontoons, it utilized a pair of highly experimental retractable hydroskis. As the heavy jet aggressively accelerated across the choppy water, it would literally rise up and violently ski on the surface, like an extreme jet-powered aquatic sports vehicle from the future. It proudly remains the only seaplane in aviation history to ever successfully break the sound barrier, flying well over 700 miles per hour. However, the experimental hydroskis created such incredibly violent vibrations during heavy takeoff runs that seasoned test pilots felt like their teeth were being violently rattled out of their skulls. This fatal, unfixable aerodynamic flaw tragically led to a catastrophic mid-air disintegration during a highly publicized test flight, instantly killing the pilot. The Sea Dart was dangerously fast, but our next machine is simply impossibly massive. What do you actually do when traditional rocket space launches become entirely too expensive and heavily dependent on clear weather? You successfully build a massive airplane large enough to safely carry a heavy rocket directly up into the high stratosphere. The scaled Composites Stratolaunch, officially debuting to the world in 2017, is the undisputed towering titan of the skies. It is powerfully driven by 6 massive jet engines, borrowed directly from Boeing 747s, and it proudly boasts a truly staggering maximum takeoff weight of 1.3 million pounds. Visually, staring at the Stratolaunch completely shatters your human sense of scale. It prominently features a freakish, heavily reinforced twin fuselage design, permanently joined by a colossal center wing structure, making it look exactly like a flying steel suspension bridge, with a record-breaking wingspan measuring exactly 385 feet. It is physically wider than a professional American football field is long. This towering behemoth was engineered specifically to act as a highly reusable flying launch pad, safely carrying heavy hypersonic test vehicles high above the clouds before dropping them. The highly trained pilots who operate the Stratolaunch always sit securely in the right fuselage, while the left fuselage remains entirely empty and completely unpressurized, intentionally creating a bizarrely asymmetrical flying experience. It is a slow, deeply lumbering giant that fundamentally redefines what is mechanically possible to lift safely into the sky. It is massive and truly majestic, yes. But the absolute final machine on our list directly defied gravity and common sense in a terrifying way. It will definitely leave you absolutely speechless and questioning military engineering decisions. How do you rapidly launch a high-performance interceptor fighter jet from the tiny, violently rolling deck of a supply cargo ship with absolutely zero runway space? You forcefully make the fighter jet take off straight up into the air, enter the absolute climax of crazy experimental aviation, the Lockheed XFV. Famously known as the Tailsitter, officially built in 1954, powered heavily by a monstrous roaring turboprop engine, producing an astonishing 5,280 horsepower. This terrifying machine was built specifically to rewrite the laws of physics. The Tailsitter is incredibly jarring and visually confusing to look at on the ground. It is a heavily armed fighter plane, specifically designed to sit completely vertical, resting very precariously on an incredibly unaerodynamic, completely cross-shaped tail structure. The crazy concept was born directly from the intense Cold War terror of hidden Soviet submarines. The military pilot would forcefully blast off vertically exactly like a space rocket, violently transition into fast horizontal flight to intercept bombers, and then miraculously hover back down tail first to land perfectly upright on a ship. The sheer engineering was technically brilliant, but it completely ignored basic human physical limitations. Highly trained test pilots openly describe the complicated landing process as an absolute living nightmare. Just imagine trying to precisely land a 5,000 horsepower machine completely backwards on a pitching ocean ship deck while constantly looking over your stressed shoulder. The unspoken truth about the Tailsitter is that it never actually successfully achieved a full unassisted vertical takeoff and landing without temporary wheels. It truly stands as the ultimate testament to the absolute madness of Cold War engineering. These 10 experimental machines are not just strange oddities, they represent the absolute limits of human creativity and raw mechanical engineering. They were real physical solutions to the most desperate problems of their time, even if some of them failed spectacularly. Now, which of these bizarre machines did you genuinely find the strangest? If you could go back in time, would you actually have the guts to test fly the rubber Inflatoplane? And is there a crazy experimental plane from the Cold War era that I missed? Let me know in the comments below. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Every week there is a new video unearthing the greatest machines in history.